Well, I can well remember my first visit to an OM ship because I was going to work on it in Amsterdam, and I'd journeyed there, and I was tired, obviously, and at journey's end, finally reached the shipyard where the ship was moored up, and it was in the shipyard for repair and refurbishment. And I just remember just kind of the feeling of just kind of like, what on earth is going on here as I approached this only to be described as ramshackle, rusted lump of steel with great hunks cut out of it by oxyacetylene torches, and wondered what on earth I'd let myself in for the next 3 months that I was going to be there. I'd come to join the refurbishment work on Logos 2, the ship before Logos Hope, in Amsterdam. And Logos 2 had formerly been a Greek island ferry and had served for many, many years. I think by that point, it had been built probably before I was born in the 1960s and had done good service. And this was late 1989. And it's 1989. Yes, it was 1989. And honestly, it had been sold by its owners, the Greek island people, ferry people. It had been sold for scrap. So it was supposed to go around to some scrap yard and be cut up and put back into, melted down for its steel. But someone had a vision. Someone could see beyond what was broken. And yes, it took gutting the thing. And when I arrived, there was no bulkheads. There was, you had to really be careful where you put your feet. Laura had already been on the ship for a little while. And that was one happy consequence of my arriving there. Because yesterday, folks, we were able to celebrate our 34th wedding anniversary. So that was a good move. So repairing the irreparable is where I want to think about as we come to Psalm 51. An illustration of that, for me, is the OM ship work and the vision and the understanding it takes. What I would have just thrown away, someone else saw as a possibility and a means. And it became a place of blessing for my life. I acquired this wonderful relationship that's kept me going all these years, and has blessed so many other people through the years as a result as well. And Psalm 51 is a kind of focus on that in a different sort of way. What is irreparable? How far is too far? What is unforgivable? As C.S. Lewis said, it's really easy to forgive when you're not the person who's been wronged. It's really easy to forgive when you're not the person who's been wronged. When you are the person that's wronged, oh my goodness, what can you forgive? What are your limits? And humanly, we all have limits, don't we? Push us this far and no further, because we're going to struggle with that. We run up with those constraints. And one of the questions that we recently had on our Alpha course is, how far can you go before God can't forgive you? How far can you go before you've gone before you're in an unforgivable situation? And we can all think of people and situations that we think of and we could imagine are unforgivable. Psalm 51 helps us to understand with God that all things are possible. The irreparable can be put right. Wrongs can be addressed. Think of it. God creates everything out of nothing. He makes things from absolutely nothing. And this psalm illustrates this beautifully, because back in Samuel, 2 Samuel, chapters 11 and 12, as David is settled into being king over Israel, he has been driven by the lust of his heart, and he's drunk on power and what he's able to do, and so he steals another man's wife. Just not anybody. Actually, this man is a really faithful supporter, helper of David, and David covets his wife and decides that because he can, he will take her for himself. And he does this, blind to his error and shame. Well, not only does he take this man's wife, he arranges to have the man killed. Okay, so that's the devastating part of the story. He steals another man's wife and then arranges, and this man is his friend, and he arranges that this man should be killed on the battlefield. That he should find himself in a place of danger and lose his life. And it happens the way that David plans, and so David sort of sits back and just kind of gets on with life. Blind to his error and shame, he carries on for a year and more until the prophet Nathan comes to him with a tale that would move a shepherd's heart. He says to him, there were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb that he bought. He raised it. It grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and slept with him in his arms. It was like a daughter to him, a pet lamb. Now, a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who'd come. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David, listening to this story, burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. Then Nathan said to David, you are the man. Wow. And it hits home. Because just a few verses later in 2 Samuel chapter 12, David says to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Suddenly, whatever he'd constructed in his head, whatever defenses he had, came crumbling down. And Psalm 51 is the result of his reflection. And it starts, I love the way that this psalm starts, because it gives, forgiveness in the face of what he had done. Think of the tragedy of it all. If he could find God's love and forgiveness, then we can come too. We can find some solace here. And I love the way he starts, because he starts in the nature of God. His reflection is on the true person of who God is. Look how he begins in verse 1. Have mercy on me. His confidence is in the mercy of God. He knows that he has no other plea. No way. He can't come saying, I'm worth it. He can't come saying, look what I've done. He just comes and pleads on God's mercy. God is merciful. And that's a wonderful thing. And then he goes on to say, according to your unfailing love. God's love is not consequential on his mood, determined by the day or what has gone on. God's love is unfailing. God is love. God is defined by love. God's every action is reflecting love to us. According to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion. So mercy, unfailing love, and compassion. Not just any sort of compassion, but great compassion. Like an immense compassion. That's the nature of God. And then he's looking at God, and then he realizes how he comes to God, and he sees the stain of what has gone on in his life. And he uses 3 words here to capture that. Blot out my transgressions. Those times where I have stepped beyond the boundaries, where I've gone beyond the boundaries that should have constrained me. Blot out my transgressions. Wash away my iniquity. That's when you go into the iniquity is morally objectionable behavior. Iniquity. Bad stuff. Stuff that anyone looks at and goes, no, that shouldn't happen. That's the way that people would have definitely looked at the situation that David had engineered. No, that shouldn't have happened. You shouldn't have done that. He'd gone beyond what was morally acceptable. And then he uses another word, cleanse me from my sin. And that word in the original language is to miss the mark. It's like used of target practice, and when you go astray, it has sinned, it has gone away, hasn't hit where it was supposed to hit. 3 words that sum up the stain that David carries. I know my transgressions, he says in verse 3. My sin is always before me. Well, you've done well for a year and a bit, David, at keeping it hidden. But now it's sitting there like this massive, massive thing. Look what he says in verse 4. And this is maybe puzzling when you read it first of all. Against you, you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. Well, what about the poor murdered Uriah? And what about the poor sexually assaulted and misused, abused Bathsheba, who a king has grabbed for his own end? They have been wronged. Their lives have been devastated by David's actions. They've been upended by them. And yet David says here in verse 4, against you, God, you only have I sinned. And that's because to sin is to miss the mark of the Holy God. To sin is to offend God. Sin is a blatant disregard for God's ownership and presence. It's a way of almost negating who God is. And yes, David has wronged badly and changed the course of history in the lives of Uriah and Bathsheba and many others associated with them, but it is because he has sinned against the Holy God. Against you, you only have I sinned. This is the heart of it. This is the core of it. If David hadn't sinned against God, he wouldn't have wronged Uriah. He wouldn't have damaged Bathsheba. But because he has sinned against God, he has brought this ruin behind him to everything almost he has touched. It's the opposite of King Midas, who everything touched by him turned to gold. Now David is touching everything and it's just crumbling up behind him, leaving a trail of devastation. But there is a way of restoration. And here in the psalm, David shows it. He recognizes that there's nothing he can do. Nothing. He can't change what's been done. Anything that he does just takes him away rather than bringing him any closer to God, closer to forgiveness, closer to getting things right, closer to putting things right with Bathsheba, with the family, with the nation, with everybody, with himself. He recognizes there's nothing he can do. And that's the same for us. When I miss the mark, when I go wrong, when something in me is broken and I in turn then break the lives of others, I can't very easily put any of that right. I can try, but my stumbling efforts often just make things worse. I can't ultimately fix the problem. I can't wind the clock back. I can't take back time. I can't take back words. I can't undo my deeds. not fully. I can't change my heart. I can't change the way I'm thinking. Only God can do that. And David realizes this. Only God can put this right. Only God can sort this out. Only God can do the impossible. Only God can repair the irreparable. And he starts to outline how in verse 7. Cleanse me with hyssop. That's what the priest did. When you went for forgiveness at the temple, the priest would take the hyssop, just a branch of a shrub, and dip it in water there blessed in the temple, and sprinkle that water over you as a sign of cleansing. Cleanse me with hyssop and I will be clean. Cleanse me, wash me, says David. Only God, you can cleanse me. Only you, God, can wash me. And if you do, I'll be whiter than snow. This stain, this awful stain that fills my life, that has so defined me, can be changed by you, God. Cleanse me, wash me. And then he goes further. Blot out my iniquity. Hide your face from my sins. Blot out my iniquity. This morally disreputable thing that I have done, this objectionable action, blot it out. Take away the shame, the embarrassment, the awful bending grief of this. Take it away from me. Blot it out. Create in me, verse 10, a pure heart, O God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. Only God can recreate the heart. Only God can renew the spirit. Restore to me the joy of your salvation. Don't cast me from your presence. Don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Restoration is a lengthy work. It's an involved work. It involves sometimes cutting back to the very basics. Like we had to, when I was working on a Logos 2, we had to clear out the junk before we could even think about moving forward. We had to throw lots of things away, cut it out, move it out. And so too in our lives, God has to be at work like some careful surgeon incising that growth that is taking over, that's going to be malignant and move us in the direction that is not going to be life-giving. Restore to me sometimes involves a careful clear out and a painful one. Cleanse me, wash me, blot out my iniquity, create in me, renew in me, restore to me. And the consequence of that action of God is spelled out from verse 13. I will teach transgressors then your ways. I'll be a living illustration, says David, of what it means to be forgiven. If you can forgive me, anyone can be forgiven. And I will proclaim that to others that have transgressed, that have gone astray, so that sinners will turn back to you. And then he goes on to say, my tongue will sing of your righteousness. The songs come from the heart because they're rooted in reality. My sacrifice, O God, verse 17, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. What does that speak of? Humility. He's learned that power corrupts, and most of all corrupted him. And so he knows that the only way forward is the path of humility. He realizes in this moment of confrontation, in this moment of realizing who God is and who he is, in this moment that there is only room for one king in his life, and it's not him. Friends, and that's the same for you and me. I know that there's only room for one king in my life, and it can't be me. King Jesus has got to rule and reign. He's got to show me the way. He's got to give me his direction. And then that ends in community. The consequence of forgiveness is that you're able to find community. May it please you, Lord, to prosper Zion, to build up the walls of Jerusalem. Why? Because this is the community of the forgiven. This is the community of people who have been irreparable but repaired, made good, restored, renewed, forgiven. We sing of that, don't we? And this is what God has done. This is the community that we're in, that we're part of. We are not here because of how polished and good we are. We're not here. We don't come to this table because we've got everything right. We don't remember that Jesus' body was broken for us and his blood was shed for us because we were so perfect. No. We come because we know we need him. We come because we have need of forgiveness, even this last week, even this day, even this moment. We need the Lord. And so we pray that he will build up the walls, because forgiven people belong together. As we reflect then on Psalm 51, can you take away this as we come to this time of remembrance, gathered around the table that John's going to lead us in just a few moments? Remember this from this little journey through Psalm 51 and the life of David. Oh man, how can the irreparable be repaired? How can the unforgivable be forgiven? Only God can forgive the unforgivable. Only God can repair the irreparable. Only God can set me right. And how does he do it? He does it through the gift of his own Son, who takes my place, who takes your place, who gives me his life in return for my life. He takes my life and dies my death, and in return he gives me his life that I might live his life. Oh, this is amazing. This is incredible. This is the way that God works out the impossible and repairs the irreparable. Thank you, John.